everyone, and welcome to No Offseason, presented by eBay. I'm Zena.
I'm Sabreena Merchant.
And I'm Ben Pickman.
And today on the show, college women's basketball is just around the corner, and we've got one big question. With JuJu Watkins out for the year, who's going to take her spot for the face of college hoops? We're going to break that down and what it takes to wear that title and the players who are ready to step up and take the spotlight. And later, we'll be joined by someone that might fit that description pretty well. All-American national champion, FIBA gold medalist, LSU guard, Flau'jae Johnson. But first, you know we got to take care of this business right now. It's our recurring segment, Deal or No Deal. And as of right now, there is still no deal. But Ben, our personal private eye detective, helped break some news recently. Ben, what's happening in terms of the negotiations between the WNBA and the players?
Yeah, I would say, Zena, we have a deal, a sort of kind of deal, because sources with knowledge of the negotiations told both me and Sabreena that on Thursday night, the WNBPA, the Players Association, did agree to terms with the WNBA on a 30-day extension on the current collective bargaining agreement, basically having the current deal expiration date pushed back 30 days until November 30th. Now, we had reported earlier this week that the league had offered the Players Union the extension. The two sides had continued to meet in person on Wednesday and Thursday at both the league offices and the Players Union offices. And then that all culminates in the PA accepting that offer to push the window back.
Okay, so not a new deal, just the same deal.
Same deal.
Push forward. Okay. Had they not extended this, what would have happened?
So a few things could have happened had there been no extension. We could have had either a period of what's called status quo, where there is no collective bargaining agreement, but the working conditions essentially remain the same, in that players can still go into facilities, they can still have contact with the organizations, they can still get medical treatment and whatnot from their team providers. But there could have also been, like, within that period of status quo, at any moment, the player side could trigger a strike or the league side could trigger a lockout. Status quo doesn't really ensure anything. It just says for the time being, things are the same. Or, we could have had immediately the league triggering a lockout or the players striking. But I think it's worth pointing out that, like, even if we don't have a deal yet, this extension does allow certain league business to go through. Like, I'm just looking through my email, and I have 3 emails about coaches' introductory press conferences next week, right? And, like, if you have those coaches' introductory press conferences, the players can't even be there if there's a lockout or a strike, right? So these are just, like, very regular league business that can happen now because there's an extension, because the collective bargaining agreement remains in place for these 30 days. While they're negotiating, these other things can still happen for the WNBA.
And we should say, like, all along, like, we have said the extension is really a public signaling of good faith and the intentions and directions of where these talks are going, right? As Sabreena said, nothing really materially changes, but it does seem to suggest that at least some progress was made in recent days, right? Even as of Tuesday night, we had still heard that the Players Union was still weighing whether to accept the extension offer or not. And now, of course, we know that they did. Earlier this week, just as a sign of where things were, so we reported that the league had to meet virtually with team front office personnel to discuss the logistics of a possible work stoppage, right? And that call was made not for the expectation that there would be a stoppage, but just out of due diligence, right? That this, in theory, could happen. There could be a lockout or a strike, within the next few days. And so we need to plan and prepare accordingly. And so they did. The back and forth this week, we saw a number of back and forth throughout the league, from the league and the Players Association. We know via a league spokesperson, or we were told that the WNBPA responded to a league proposal on Monday. We then reported on Thursday night that the WNBA responded with a counter proposal to that WNBPA proposal on Wednesday morning, right? So that's a quick turnaround when you're thinking about one side issuing a counter proposal, but that also speaks to a desire to try and make progress on this agreement. So that is, again, also where we're at. We should say, too, extension's not uncommon in collective bargaining, and this is there is some historical precedent for this as well, that the league's previous CBA, when it expired in 2019, the two sides agreed to a 60-day extension and then another 2-week extension before that, now current agreement was finalized in Jan 2020.
I think the timing of those
The one
extensions is interesting for this particular offseason because, as you mentioned, Ben, it was a 60-day extension back in 2019 and only a 30-day extension this time around. And I wonder if that speaks to all of the business that has to get done this offseason that didn't have to get done back in 2019. You think about the expansion drafts in addition to, again, as we've pointed out, every veteran but two being free agents this upcoming offseason. So there is a lot of work that needs to get done even once the CBA is finalized. So I wonder if this 30-day extension versus a 60-day extension last time is a signal that, hey, like, we need to continue to make progress at a quicker rate than has historically been done before.
Well, speaking of the progress, I think one of the things that is also kind of lingering out there is we heard what the WNBA had offered the union and the players, but we never heard what was in that counter proposal. Did you guys have a chance to get any information regarding that? Is there a chance that we'll ever learn what is, at this point where they are at in these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we continue to ask about and try and learn about. And trust me, we're doing what we can to try and nail down specifics on these proposals. I would say we're light on a lot of the proposal details right now from both sides, frankly. But I do think it is a sign of at least some good faith progress on some measures that the union said, hey, we want to accept this extension offer and continue the current agreement, because that is not something they contractually were under any obligation to do.
Okay, so it looks like Halloween isn't going to be as scary as we thought it might be, but now it looks like our Thanksgivings are going to need a little bit more gratitude because this is just going to, it's just a little bit kicked down the road. But as Sabreena was mentioning, there's a lot of business that's going to happen in the next few weeks in terms of these announcements and players being able to at least meet potential coaches that they could be playing for. Again, we have no idea where everything's going to shake out, but this deal does look like the communication going back and forth is going to continue for the time being. Anything we should be on the lookout for as we get closer to that next deadline?
Well, I think this extension is a sign that at least things are progressing, right? As Ben said, there was no obligation from the players' union side or from the league side to offer the extension or accept the extension. So the fact that they are continuing this process for at least the next 30 days is a good indicator that, like, they expect to get to a deal, right? Like when we had Aaron Drake on the show, she said, like, we believe October 31st is a real deadline. We were treating it like a real deadline. And now November 30th is that real deadline. So I think the shortened period of the extension gives me a little bit of hope. Like, you wouldn't ask for an extension if you didn't think that you could actually make progress within that window.
And I think I would just add, like, big picture, I think all along, the two sides recognize that they want to continue the momentum of this moment in the WNBA, that both sides, despite the animosity, despite the public barbs that have gone back and forth, do want to continue to play basketball. They don't want to miss games and, adversely impact the players or the fans and any of the league stakeholders, right? They want to get this deal done eventually. The question is, who has more leverage? Who might have to make more concessions on the other side? How does this negotiation play out? We don't know the answers to any of those questions, and that is why, it still has been a tense negotiation process, and I'm sure it still will be, frankly, in the coming months, because there is a lot to do, and there's still a lot of ground to make up. But, I think it is important to remember that both sides do actively, they want to continue this moment, and that we should be reminded of that throughout this entire process.
Well, I appreciate you, Ben, Sabreena, for being in the trenches, getting this information to us, keeping us up to date. This is going to be a recurring segment because there still technically is no new deal. It's just an extended deal for now. But let's shift on over to another women's basketball league that still has some new news to unleash amidst all of this drama. And I'm talking about Unrivaled, of course. Got some coaching news coming out of the Unrivaled League. Unrivaled ain't letting this drama in the WNBA keep them going, keep them from stopping or locking out or doing any of the things, okay? They're keeping their business going, and they crushed their inaugural season with higher than expected viewership and revenue. There's been so much success. It sparked an early expansion, 2 new teams joining the league, Breeze BC and Hive BC. And amidst the drama of this other women's basketball league, Unrivaled is like, hey, we're going to be doing some things with these two new teams. Ben, break it down. What's going on with Unrivaled?
Yeah, there's a bunch of developments in Unrivaled that I think we should talk about, Zena. Let's start with the coaching front. They announced their 8 head coaches on Thursday afternoon for the upcoming season. 4 of them are returners: Teresa Weatherspoon, Nola Henry, DJ Sackman, and Andrew Wade. And then they announced 4 other new head coaches to Unrivaled this year. Those coaches will be Noelle Quinn, the former Seattle Storm head coach, Chicago Sky assistant coach Rena Wakama, Connecticut Sun assistant coach Roneka Hodges, and recent New York Liberty assistant coach Zach O'Brien. So those will be your 4 head coaches that are joining the league this year. Quinn will be the head coach of Breeze, and Rena will be the head coach of Hive, the 2 new teams that are entering this year. Hodges will replace Adam Harrington of Phantom, and Zach O'Brien will replace Phil Handy as the head coach of Miss. So those are your coaching updates for next year.
Shout out to Rena. We were both Gardner Flames back in North Carolina. Love the small little group of 919 showing up on the big stage here. That is awesome. I love the fact that new coaches are getting opportunities. Noelle Quinn showing back up into the space as a coach. This is going to be fun. I'm really excited to see, who she ends up getting to coach in that space. But what else is happening? Because there's more to it in terms of the players, right? The player pool that's been going on. Tell us a little bit more about that.
That is true. They also announced their final 3 players in the pool for this season. Those 3 players will be Ari McDonald, the Indiana Fever guard, or veteran guard, who is coming off of a foot injury but is expected to be healthy and back ready to go when the Unrivaled season begins in January. Beck Allen, the veteran wing, another, very professional player, professional shooter, should definitely help on the wing. And the headliner to this trio, Dominique Malanga, the number 2 pick in the 2025 WNBA draft. She will be taking part in Unrivaled this season. And yes, we talked about that she had a wrist surgery. But again, she is also expected to be healthy and ready to go when that second season begins. That is a big news addition for the league in year 2.
Well, Malanga being an Unrivaled certainly brings some intrigue to the fact that she is no longer in her contract at Fenerbahce, which I can see why the Turkish club was a little interested in her terminating that contract without what they consider to be just cause. So that's definitely something we're going to be looking into, considering she is still going to be playing during this WNBA offseason.
Yeah, I think it certainly is a little interesting. It's certainly intriguing that she is joining the league in their second season. I will also say, as it relates to their second season, there are some other developments from Unrivaled, or that we will see in Unrivaled this year. And I did talk to Claire Duelius, their general manager of the league, about this for a story on the site, that they heard a lot of feedback from players as they prepare for the second season. Brandon Glasheen, Brendan talked about that on the podcast when he was on a couple weeks ago. Among them was trying to, kind of continue to develop in their training staff and injury prevention and take health of considerations into players as a priority. So last year they had 3 trainers for the 6 teams. Now every team is going to have their own head trainer, their own training staff. Each team is going to have their own strength and performance coach. Each team is also going to have a player development coach for each of the clubs. They're even taking over another studio on the lot where they play. So the literal space that they are going to have this year is growing significantly in size. They're going to add a practice court as a result. The training room is going to more than double in size. And as we've talked about before as well, they're going to eliminate back-to-backs this year as a function of going 4 nights on the calendar. So a lot of expansion in the league more broadly. It's not just the 2 teams. It's not just adding 4 coaches. It's not just adding the 3 players I mentioned. But again, a continued investment in trying to improve the player experience as they begin their second season.
They are building this out. I mean, talk about trying to set a standard. It's really impressive what they're doing, and I already know I'm so excited to tune in. More nights, already, they're finding more steps or more opportunities through a busy off season. And yeah, that dull period, if you guys are NBA fans listening, that dull period in January, February, up until All-Star, don't worry. Unrivaled's got you, okay? You'll be good with a lot of great basketball, both college and, of course, professional for women's basketball. So let's get into from the court to the big screen because there's some new news coming out. We've heard of, Kelsey Plum was in Happy Gilmore 2. She also was like on a TV series, Municipal Starter, this year. Angel Reese in the Idris Elba-led House of Dynamite. We know that there are stars budding off the court from these basketball players, but now it looks like it's Paige Bueckers' turn, and she is taking her game off the court and she's being set to star in a new sports film called Jess and Pearl, an Apple original film. Now, the context of this film, Sabreena, I'm going to ask you to break it down for me. I mostly am just like, in the time that you guys have spent covering Paige, maybe you have gone through a few TikToks, you've gone through her social media. I didn't know that Paige was an actress. I didn't know that this was a thing that was on the radar for Paige. So this is actually very new for me to kind of consider and try to put my mind around. I just really hope it doesn't end up being one of those situations where, sometimes you get athletes in these movies and it's just like the monotone voice. It's like reading the lines and it's just like there's no intonation to it. I need Paige Bueckers to make sure she's got the best acting coach. But did you guys see this coming? Like what was in the tea leaves when it comes to Paige Bueckers becoming potentially a movie star?
Well, I'm curious about the timeline of all this because, on the subject of Unrivaled, Paige Bueckers is obviously one of the players in season 2 of Unrivaled. So it's not as if she has a ton of free time until that season starts in Miami,
True.
in early January. So unclear, when this project is going to be taken off, like if she's going to film it, start during this offseason, if it's going to like bleed into the Unrivaled season, if it's going to start during next offseason, Lord knows. I do think it's, pretty par for the course with these athletes in their single lead features that like she's playing a character that probably is pretty similar to herself and that she, develops a friendship with a player, during their high school AAU days and sort of the business and the competition of basketball, like threatens to turn that into a rivalry. And where does it go from there? I feel like, I don't know which character she is, probably Jess, considering it's first in the name of the title,
right.
But it probably bears some similarities to Paige Bueckers, growing up, which I think is the right way for an athlete to break into, movies because you got to go with what you know, right?
Absolutely. Can't go outside your comfort zone too much, which I feel like I just commend all these players for going out their comfort zones. The commercialization of all of these athletes has been surreal to watch. And this isn't a low budget situation. I mean, like the producer of White Lotus is going to be producing this. There's, I love that Paige Bueckers is also an executive producer behind this, being able to put her stamp on it from the storytelling. But Ben, who do you think they should cast around Paige?
Oh, see, I'm the wrong person to ask this question, Zena. This
what?
is not.
You're like a Broadway lover.
You started
the arts.
You started to rattle off some of those other like. I've seen Happy Gilmore too. I did see the Kelsey Plum cameo in that. Some of those other projects that you mentioned, I have not seen. Like I've seen some. Right. I mean, what are your favorite? I want to know from you. Like, who are your favorite athlete turned actors? Who do you think are your best athlete turn actors? Are there specific basketball players who go into movies that you think this person did a great job, this person maybe did a not so great job? Like I think you're more of an expert on this than me, Zena, or you might have some more takes.
As
Zena is thinking, I want to throw in a couple. I thought LeBron James was very good in Trainwreck. Not as good in Space Jam 2, but I thought he was very good.
I was gonna say,
Trainwreck.
I was like, when you said LeBron, I was like,
yeah,
Space Jam is questionable, but okay, yeah,
no. And Hustle, right? Juan Hernan Gomez, I thought was very good in that movie. I realize I'm limited to basketball players here, but I think those two stand out as athletes.
I think that works.
Made the transition pretty well.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Anthony Edwards has said that he wants to star in a movie with like Timothée Chalamet. They want to do a remake of, what was the movie he said? Some Denzel movie. But yeah, I think Anthony Edwards probably has the goods
Not Training
to act
Day
as well. Yeah.
Oh, maybe it was Training Day.
Yeah, I think it was.
That's actually hilarious. Yeah. So, okay, I was gonna say, Anthony Edwards. Where was that Netflix movie? Hustle, right? Obviously, yeah. So Hustle. I thought he was a great villain in that movie. I haven't seen like a lot of projects. I've seen clips, but Iman Shumpert is a really good actor. Also a really great dancer, which we all found out on Dancing with the Stars. I'm trying to think of women's basketball players or stars that were like awesome. The only the only movie that comes to mind when I'm like best basketball performances that were actually like pretty bad, but it was so bad it was good. What was that Disney original movie with the twins that
Double
was
Team.
based on a true story? Double Team. For the new
So
Gen
good.
Z listeners, you got to go back and find it in the annals. Find it in the archives, okay? Because when I tell you, it's such a good, bad movie, but it's so good. It's a great women's basketball show or movie. Okay, I clearly don't have any like women's basketball players. We're going to think about this. Guys, perfect opportunity for engagement. Drop in the comments. Like, let us know, who are we forgetting that has transitioned perfectly from the basketball court to the movies, from the women's side particularly. Well, let's keep this going because we know Paige Bueckers was a face of the NCAA for a while, and that's going to be our main conversation today. For the last several years, we feel like this preoccupation in all sports, really, but we've now seen in women's college basketball with identifying that one star, that one person that kind of represents this sport. We had Caitlin for a while, and then it was Caitlin and Angel, particularly when they were battling, and then there was Paige, and then it was JuJu on her rise up. But we know with JuJu being sidelined this season as she still heals from her torn ACL from last year, there's a question. Who is going to walk into the spotlight and claim the mantle as the face of women's college basketball? So we're going to dig into that question, but y'all know we always got to set it up, got to give some context, okay? And so I think the first question we want to ask ourselves is like, why is there a need for this? And particularly, we know we've seen it in the pro leagues, we've seen it in the male leagues, but it doesn't seem like it's been needing to be a player in women's college basketball for so long, until like in more recent years. So Sabreena, I'm gonna start with you. Like, what are your thoughts on like this new found like focus on trying to find a face of women's college basketball? Like, where does that come from? Where do you see the shift in this?
Well, I think for so long, college programs have more so been defined by their head coaches, not so much the individual players, because you do have regular turnover, right? Even before transferring, you only get a player for 4 years tops, right? Whereas a college coach can be there for eons, really. Like, you think about the faces of
Yeah.
women's college basketball, and that would have been Pat Summitt and Muffet McGraw and Gino Auriemma, coaches who, Tara Vanderveer, right? Like, coaches who
Yep.
defined eras of college basketball and were super successful, and players wanted to play for them as much as they wanted to play for the program, right? Like, they were synonymous with the program, and they were the ones who you marketed, right? Like, if UConn was playing Stanford, it was Gino versus Tara, Gino versus Pat, Gino versus Muffet, a lot of Gino versus. So clearly Gino figures prominently into this. And I
Right.
think, even though players are still transient, right? Like, you still have the maximum of 4 years because blissfully we were done with the COVID years. And you still have transferring. So it's not as if players are in one spot, for the entire 4 seasons. But the institution of NIL to me has just made players a commodity in a way that they weren't before. And so you could,
Yep.
see like coaches building a brand for themselves that players really couldn't just because they were limited by these rules of amateurism, right? And now that we see players on commercials, in movies, right? Like, doing all of these
Yeah.
things outside of basketball that make them celebrities of their own right. Like, I think this is sort of when we've transitioned into, like, players can be the faces of college basketball too, because they are marketable and accessible and visible in a way that they just weren't able to be before NIL, I think.
I think that's a really, really good point, Sabreena. And I think, honestly, the question or the point about coaches being the faces of a program, that applies to a lot of different college sports, right? It's certainly something you think about in college football, say, when you have a Nick Saban being the face of Alabama, for instance. As just one example of a longtime head coach who achieves so much success. So often those longtime head coaches become the faces of programs. I think you hit the nail on the head with the NIL component as well, just players becoming brands and more part of our lives and part of the ecosystem and the cultural zeitgeist than ever before. I do think what is so interesting, though, about women's college basketball and some of the faces that we have had in recent years is, we've had superstar players before in the sport. Your Sabreena Ionescu's, your Brianna Stewart's, your Asia Wilson's, in the pre-kind of 2020 era. But I think what is so interesting about some of the more recent quote-unquote faces of the sport in women's college basketball is oftentimes they are the faces of college basketball more broadly, both like men's and women's. Like I think the two things go hand in hand right now in this era of men's college basketball where there is so much turnover, where there are so many players who are one and done, where there seemingly is a lack of huge college stars who then transition to the NBA. You know, the Caitlin Clarks, the JuJu Watkins, the Angel Reeses, the Aaliyah Boston too. Like those people have been in our lives in college for much longer. They haven't transferred. They haven't bopped around from school to school. And that, I think, also leads to them becoming not only faces of the sport that they play, but faces of their universities, faces of the college basketball ecosystem more generally.
I think that's such an interesting point,
Absolutely.
especially like when you consider Paige, because you think about the last 5 years of UConn, like the men's team won 2 national titles more than the women's team won. And you'd be hard pressed to find any men's player on the UConn Huskies, even the 2-time national champions, that is anywhere as close to as popular as Paige Bueckers.
No, not at all. Stephon Castle, Donovan Clegan, like, shout out to y'all being in the NBA, but like, you are not touching the numbers that Paige is doing in terms of just pure motion and commercialization. It's interesting. All of this is fascinating. And I'm thinking as you guys are talking from a basketball perspective of like recruitment. So when you were getting recruited, you didn't go because this player was there. You went because a coach was there. And what they were known for in terms of like their success rate in developing talent, who were they able to attract to their school? And yes, you looked at a Gino Auriemma because of the superstars that he was able to attract to UConn, or a Tara Vanderveer. If you were a post player, that was a goal, right? To be able to go play for a program like Stanford. And so it was always about the coaches from the perspective of they've been associated with these brands for so long, but their style has also been associated with the brand of the basketball that you hope to play as a future baller in the NCAA. It was rarely like, oh, I want to go to this school because Breanna Stewart went there, because it was many Breanna Stewarts, right? There were so many different, and depending on what position you played, what player you were looking up to in terms of like where they went to school and what you wanted to follow in the footsteps of. So it was always this legacy aspect of the school and the coach and what the program represented versus the individual players. Whereas nowadays, people want to go to South Carolina because Asia Wilson went there, right? People want to go to particular schools because there's legacies built by the players. And I think there's also this affinity for players who stay with a program for a long time. We see that on the pro level. Sue Bird with Seattle, Diana Taurasi with Phoenix. Like, there's so much respect for that. And so now we're looking at today's NCAA, and there are some players that have stayed with their programs for a long time, some players that have switched around, but there's a lot of players that want to be in that position of face of the league. So what do you think are some of the factors that go into a player being elevated to that status?
I think they have to be really good, first of all. I feel like I'm always the one who's like, wins kind of matter.
Period. Yeah.
You want to be successful, right? Like, you got to be a player who produces. You have to be a player who is on a winning program, for better or worse, a player who's scoring, like, leading the nation in scoring on a team that doesn't get out of the first weekend of the tournament is not going to be the face of college basketball, which is why kudos to Nia Lassen for getting on South Carolina and, potentially putting herself in this discussion. But right. I think production, being on a winning team, advancing far in the tournament, all of those things are sort of prerequisites for making yourself a face of college basketball.
I mean, I think, too, you kind of have to want to be the face of a sport to be the face of a sport. That it's not just about how good or how talented you are. It is how you embrace the spotlight with which you are afforded, right? And how you cross over as a result into other spaces that transcend the sport that you play, right? I think in the context of women's college basketball, right now, so many of the faces of the sport, or who have been, they have teams around them. We see them do a lot of brand appearances. We see them in commercials. We see them, New York City Fashion Week, sitting courtside at WNBA games, at other high-profile events. Like, I think having that cultural crossover is really, really important for that player, whoever it is or whoever it has been before.
Yeah. Being positioned, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's by your team, by yourself, like that feels like it's really important. It's interesting when you look at what the general zeitgeist of NCAA basketball would say is the face of the league. I really think it depends on who you're asking. Like, in conversations with other millennial watchers of NCAA basketball, folks that have played and have left, or are just now fans of the sport because it has blown up, a lot of folks have more of an affinity towards bigs. If you ask people who's the face of, the NBA or the WNBA right now, a lot of them will probably say a power forward or some big, right? Asia Wilson, Afisa Collier, et cetera, in that millennial older generation. And I don't know if that's because of the style of the game. We appreciate someone that can do a little bit of everything, versus a lot of the Gen Zers. If you ask them who are the faces of the WNBA, for example, they'll go with a guard. They'll go with a Caitlin Clark. They'll go with the Paige Bueckers. And that same thing applies to the NCAA. Like, I would say Sarah Strong is a growing face of the league. And I want someone like a Joyce Edwards to be able to pop up as a face of the league. But Lauren Betts in that conversation, right? I have an affinity towards these bigs. However, high schoolers are like, no, give me Azzi Fudd, give me JuJu, give me any of these point guards, these guards that are playmakers, versus just, the bigs and such. So I feel like there's also an aspect of like, what do we value in the terms of the style of the game that they play, whoever the potential face is. But I don't know. It's interesting how that breaks down too from a generational perspective. We might not be seeing these players in the same capacity. Some of these younger guys, our younger fans, are seeing them on TikTok and social media, and they're completely enthralled by them from that perspective. Versus us, we're seeing them on commercials. We're seeing, Forbes articles being written about them. We're seeing them in these photo shoots.
So old
with,
as you're talking,
particular...
Zena, but it's very accurate.
I know, but it's true. But it's so true, right? Like we engage with them in a different way. And I think that also influences the face of the league conversation. Who has a better social media following versus who has better positioning in these, particularly cultural relevant moments. How would you guys say TV deals, TV exposure, social media, like how does that play into this conversation too?
I mean, I think it plays a big role, but I think the thing I keep coming back to that I think is so interesting is just how good of a player. Like, I appreciate that Sabreena threw out at the very beginning that you need to be a good player, but I think what sometimes is fascinating to me about face of the league conversations is there's a certain tier or a certain level you have to get to, but I don't think you have to be the best player to be the face of a sport. I think you need to have moments, like high profile, high leverage moments that, you thrive in key situations so that the casual consumer recognizes your greatness. But I don't think you need to be the best player in a sport. Now, I know in recent memory, you might say, well, JuJu Watkins, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Paige Bueckers, like those were the best players in the sport. But I think, to me, that is, it's hard to say exception to the rule because I just rattled those players off and they've been the best for the past couple of years.
Proof of your concept, Ben?
Right.
Well, I think about it this year. Like this year, the two players that I think are the faces of women's college basketball, I don't think either of them are the best players in women's college basketball, right? I think Azzi Fudd and Flau'jae Johnson are the two players best positioned to be the faces of the sport this year. I think both of them are in the top 10 to 15 in terms of best players in women's college basketball this year. I think both of them are in the top 10, say, in terms of WNBA draft picks going forward. But I think both of them, we've seen them in moments. We've seen Flau'jae in NCAA tournament games. We've seen Azzi Fudd most recently be a most outstanding player in the Final Four. But what makes them faces of the sport is that they've had that crossover into other spaces. They've done that without being the very best player. But they've still also had great moments. So maybe it's this year is the exception to the rule that has been in the past. But that is, I think, what makes this year so interesting or a little bit different.
Yeah, I think the thing with this season is, the best player, I think we all, I don't know if we all did, but we have come to some sort of consensus that Sarah Strong is going to be the best player in the country this season, just based on what she did her freshman year and the potential UConn has going forward. And Sarah Strong, as Ben mentioned, like, to be the face of the sport, you got to want it. And Sarah Strong is not the most media friendly. She's not the most loquacious, for lack of a better word, when it comes to talking. She doesn't exactly have a huge presence beyond the fact that she's just really freaking good at basketball. And I think that sort of prevents her from being, marketable in the same way that Paige Bueckers was before her at UConn. But that's kind of what makes this season, I think, doesn't even have a face, right? Because I think you have to be a top 5 player at the very least to be in this conversation. And if none of those are really, claiming the mantle in the same way that a Paige or a JuJu or a Caitlin did, then, like, do we just have a year where maybe it's just a lot of people contending for the crown and there is no single one face of college basketball? Or is someone going to emerge, like, 2 years ago, like, we had an idea that JuJu was going to be very good, but we didn't know that she was going to be that good, right? And so, like, is someone going to surprise us in a sense and sort of, come into this conversation that we haven't thought about? Because I kind of think, like, there's a really high bar for how good you have to be the face of a sport, right? Like, we talk about, Caitlin Clark in WNBA, and, like, maybe it felt early, but she was first team all WNBA as a rookie, right? Like, top 5 player, And I think if you're a first team All American, that's sort of like where I set, my bar of, like, who could be a face of a sport. And I just think that, like, it's a tough conversation to wiggle your way into. And maybe we're just at a point where, like, television networks are like, throw out some games and, like, see what sticks, right? Yeah. And we'll just see, like, who sort of resonates, because it is a far more open field, I think, than it has been in years past.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about this, I don't know how many times we've said interesting today, actually. This is all very intriguing. But what I love about it is you guys have laid it out really beautifully. You've got to be really, really good, and you also have to want it. And I think that is kind of the reason why Sarah Strong, like, I'm going to have to push it to the back, regardless, because we barely get 3 words sometimes out of Sarah Strong in interviews. Like, she's not that person that's looking to be positioned, at least not yet. And she's really just focused on the basketball. But Ben, to your point, these moments, right? There's got to be intrigue. And that's why I keep saying, we've been saying the word interesting and intrigue. There's got to be intrigue when they're on these big stages of, oh, I want to see what they're doing. And it's not just the basketball. It's just because you've also been seeing them in all these other circumstances. And you're just like, I wonder what's going on with Azzi Fudd. I wonder what's going on with Flau'jae Johnson. Let's see, how are they balancing it all, right? I think that there's also this element of that too. So let's talk about it, because Flau'jae Johnson, to me, feels like the face. And that's because we have seen her team excel. We have seen her excel as a member of this team. And she is also almost untouchable right now when it comes to the numbers she's doing, whether it's the deals, whether it's the amount of verticals and lanes that she's in. She feels like she's everywhere, and also is, like, owning it casually. She's very much, it was Paige and her for a while, right? We've kept seeing Paige and her pop up at every event together as college kids. And now she's here in this space by herself. And I feel like it's pretty obvious that it's her. But then there's also Azzi. That's right there. I just literally read an article about Azzi Fudd this morning about her learning how to do her hair and taking advantage of that through an internship that she had in college. I feel like she's creeping up there too. What's it going to take, I think, to be able to announce one of an Azzi or a Flau'jae as a face of the league over the other?
Well, I'll start with Flau'jae. I think you go back to the 2025 NCAA tournament, and the 3 athletes I would say who were the most prevalent on commercials, just visibility, would have been Paige, JuJu, and Flau'jae. And, well, 2 of them are gone.
Period.
So that just sort of leaves the vacuum for Flau'jae Johnson. But in terms of just the, being the face of the sport, being the best player in the sport, or not necessarily best, but among the best in the sport, Flau'jae's never been the best player on her team, right? Like, you had Angel Reese, you had Anissa Morrow. And so this is a new situation for her where she's going to be called upon to do a lot more for LSU. We'll get to that with Azzi too. Like, she's obviously never been the best player on her team, and I don't think she will be this year. But there is at least an opening for Flau'jae if LSU does well. Like, a lot of the credit is going to go to her, and that program is popular. Kim Mulkey obviously draws a lot of attention. Like, I think there is a chance there, if she takes a step forward as a player, to sort of step into this space where she already has the popularity part. Now she gets to mix in, like, oh, I'm actually going to be one of the best players in the game too. That mix, I think, is sort of unique to, the rest of the players we're going to be talking about here.
And I think to me, Sabreena, the case for Azzi is the cultural crossover that she has right now entering this season. It is all of the appearances, all of the magazine covers, all of the panels, all of whatever that encompasses that she has done over really the last year and a half, that I think really adds to her case as being one of the voices of the sport, is kind of in some respects, like, the elder statesperson of the sport, like through no fault of her own, often because of injury. She's been around women's college basketball too for a very long time, developing into this household name. And yes, she might not be the best player in the sport. She might not be the best player on her own team, but I do think she has that kind of household cachet, that household name recognition that, a lot of other people don't necessarily. I mean, we saw it Thursday morning, the latest example, her being on the cover of Slam magazine, doing another photo shoot for another magazine cover, is just another example of the kind of cultural reach that she has. Now, look, I can't really mount a strong case too, though, against Flau'jae Johnson here. I mean, she has 3 times as many Instagram followers as Azzi Fudd. We've seen her do rap songs with Lil Wayne. We've seen her Sabreena, you and I have seen her work the All-Star Game
twice.
Party circuit twice. And just know that, like, in the women's basketball space, getting Flau'jae Johnson to an event is a really big deal for a lot of brands, a lot of partners who are putting on events. So, like, I don't really, and maybe it sounds like a cop-out, I don't really have a good pushback. Maybe Zena does, for why she isn't necessarily the face,
in
but
terms of Azzi, right?
Flau'jae. Yeah. Well, in terms of Flau'jae too.
Flau'jae, yeah, okay.
But I don't think there is a clear emergence between one of the two of them either. And I think honestly that's the thing that I'm just watching for this year, to see, does one of them really emerge as the central figure throughout this season? That's a big question that we have entering the year.
And it's a great question. And I'll say, so there's so many things that are popping in my head for the both of them. So for Flau'jae, there's 2 things that play into her emergence to me as the face of the league. Number one are the numbers, right? It's the sheer consistency with which we're seeing her. It's the fact that she has 2 million Instagram followers versus anyone else being 1 million or less within her space of the NCAA. It is the cultural crossover, as you mentioned, Ben, and it's the swagger with which she moves. She's on these big platforms like BET, like these All-Star games, and being able to perform. I think she performed for like Amazon Prime at one point, like was the main performer that they chose. Like, it was like, whoa, these are big moments that Flau'jae Johnson is a part of. Where Azzi Fudd gets an opportunity for me are 2 ways. Azzi was one of the first players to be stamped by 2 like very big basketball players in the world of basketball. Kobe Bryant was her mentor and someone she trained with. And then also Steph Curry, right? There was that association with him as well. And so there's always been, from the start of Azzi's career, like, oh, she's stamped by some of the best basketball players to ever do it. And then she got hurt, and it kind of gave a lull in her kind of growth as the face of the league, while the names of like a Flau'jae Johnson were being consistently grown and being discussed. So there was a little bit of a lull. Now you get the opportunity, you look at Flau'jae and Azzi. In the last year, there's been this emergence of Azzi, in my opinion, as like America's sweetheart. She's cute. She's sweet. The friendship that we now know is a relationship with Paige Bueckers. Like, people really, she endeared herself into the American populace from that perspective, and in a way that Flau'jae did not. She didn't have that kind of dynamic with anyone on her team that people were really cheering on and being behind. Like, I don't even know. There's an aspect of I know that Flau'jae Johnson is dating someone that plays for LSU. I don't know who that is, but there's a level of we know Azzi's personal life as much as we know her basketball life and her commercial life. that's not the same way that we know Flau'jae's commercial life and we know her basketball life. And I think that has kind of leveled up Azzi in a way. I'm moving the mic as I'm doing this, but has leveled up Azzi to catch up with Flau'jae in a way because we feel like we kind of know her on a personal level.
A lot of other players, who could find themselves in this conversation just because, like, Ben, I think we can make good cases like you did for Azzi and Flau'jae, but I don't think they're like airtight in the way that they were with JuJu and Paige and Caitlin before her, so
Sure.
You think about if somebody's just like truly excellent and just the kind of player you have to turn on and watch every single game like Sarah Strong, if, Lauren Betts enters that conversation, if Hannah Hidalgo has another season where she's just, an absolute menace on both ends of the court. Like if there are people who become appointment viewing on television, I think that helps them sort of transcend like whatever marketability or, other like personality questions, they might have. Because I do think first and foremost, this is a basketball conversation. Like I just think about all the faces of sport and like it really just starts with them being excellent at their jobs. And again, this is college basketball, not actually a job, but whatever. So I think that there are a lot of other players who could find themselves like, in this discussion. Just because like as much as I believe in like the potential of Azzi and Flau'jae to be household names, they just haven't risen to the same level as the players before them that we've talked about over the last 5 years.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
where does Olivia Miles fall in this?
I think that's a great question because I was going to bring her up because to me she seems like another player who seemingly is now in an opportunity, like a place school-wise, where she can take another level in recognition, in just widespread fame, renown across the sport. Because look, Olivia Miles might have been, the number 3 pick in the WNBA draft last year. She goes back to school. She says, I want to get healthier. I want to continue to, develop the mental side of my game. I want to feel like I am 100% physically and mentally, having coming off an ACL injury of her own not that long ago. And so she transfers from Notre Dame to TCU, where really the orbit, like she is the sun and all the planets really revolve around her in this analogy, right? Like she is at the center of everything that they do. She is going to make that program, like they're going to shine as bright as she does. And so we know Olivia Miles, like there's no Hannah Hidalgo in this situation. Like there's no who's going to play first fiddle, who's going to play second fiddle. Like it is just Olivia Miles in TCU leading the way, much like Haley Van Lith did a year ago. And so, I think she is also knocking at that door as being one of the faces of the sport. I mean, you know me, like I'm a big fan of players who wear glasses and goggles. And so the Olivia Miles goggles, like, I think that is another factor that kind of separates her from peers just in terms of look and style and her game. It might not be as kind of fast twitch as some other players, but I do think there's something that, like, I certainly appreciate that. Yeah,
it's pretty flashy.
It is flashy, but she also kind of plays at her own pace. Like she plays at her own like rhythm too. That I think separates her game in a really interesting and way that draws a lot of people in. So she could certainly emerge.
Olivia Miles plays like an ABA former basketball player,
Right.
like old basketball, very Magic Johnson back in the day vibes.
Yeah, and that is why I think like she is another player very much could be in this conversation. And if she has a breakout year too, it wouldn't be totally surprising. And we talked about it last week, if she was the number 1 pick in the draft next year. And if she's the best player in the country and people already know her name, she could very well end up being, the face of the sport by season's end.
And maybe it's the freshman who emerges, sort of like what JuJu did a couple years ago. You think about Aaliyah Chavez and this opportunity that she has to play a really fast run and gun type of basketball at Oklahoma with a team that's already pretty successful with her coming in. They made a Sweet 16 last year. They've got a lot of returning veterans. She can make a lot of highlights. She can, play a very aesthetically pleasing brand of basketball. You've got Jazzy Davidson at USC, who will just have run of the show, really, with the Trojans.
Yep.
Honestly, I think names matter here. Like Jazzy is a fun name, and that'll just be good for, just marketability purposes. I think, there's a blueprint of what JuJu Watkins did 2 years ago that she can very easily, fall into. And like the LA marketing machine is a real thing, just in the same way that the UConn marketing machine is a real thing. And that's why, you can never discount Azzi or Sarah.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was going to say. And for the basketball heads, I am well aware that Magic Johnson did not play in the ABA era. I was just putting that together. I know people are going to come for me, so just want to clear that up. But Yes, the name is a thing. The brand is a thing. And I think there is something that is beautiful about JuJu Watkins and Jazzy now Davidson at USC, loving basketball, right? Like there is something to that. And like the UConn juggernaut that has been there for so long. People know like UConn and you can and all the different chants that there are. You guys can correct me on that. But there's this element of the brand of the school as well. That's why I think a lot of people were surprised that Leah Chavez chose Oklahoma versus another one of these big brands in terms of like being able to break out. But either way, these are just thoughts. These are just opinions. We want to hear what you guys are thinking. But before we do that, Sabreena, you actually sat down with one of the people that we have talked about in terms of this Face the League conversation. And I'm very excited to see and hear what she had to say. Okay. All right, Sabreena, there was a million brands, I feel like, that Flau'jae Johnson is like involved in, et cetera. Like, what was that conversation like for you, just being able to talk to her and how poised she was as a college kid representing all these brands?
I mean, it's unsurprising that Flau'jae is that poised. Like, I prepped for that interview by watching her America's Got Talent audition, back when she was 14 years old. And she just has an incredible command and presence. So the fact that she can handle an interview with me is not surprising at all.
I get nervous talking to you, Sabreena. I mean,
I'm no Simon Cowell, I'll tell you that.
Fair. Yeah, no, Flau'jae's been very much in control of her voice, her brand, herself for a very long time. And it's just going to keep growing. So very excited to see what she does out on the court and also off the court. My main thing is if we find a way for her to play a game and then also somehow perform at halftime, we have reached new levels here.
Joining us on the No Offseason podcast today is an All-American, national champion, gold medalist, Kim Mulkey impersonator, and that's just her day job. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show, Flau'jae Johnson. So Flau'jae, as one of the busiest athletes in college basketball, how does being part of Team Galaxy help you balance everything from sports, music, academics, everything happening?
Yeah, being part of Team Galaxy really helps me navigate just because they give me all the tools that I need from like just my phone and being able to manage my calendars to my wearables, you know what I'm saying? My ring, my Galaxy ring, it tracks my sleep, which is something that I check every morning. Like, as soon as I wake up, like, how did I sleep? Like, how much energy do I have, going into the day? So just give me the information and the tools that I need in order to succeed. Off the court, for sure, handling my business, my academics, but also taking care of my body because like recovery is super big for me. Sleep is huge for athletes. And I've really been on as I've gotten older and from a freshman to a senior, like taking care of my body has been like my main objective.
I mean, speaking of that, you're now a senior at LSU. This is your 4th season with the same program. You're kind of like a unicorn in college basketball too. What does it mean to you to be ending your career at the same place that you started it with the same coach?
It means a lot to me. I never really thought it would go any other way. You know what I'm saying? I always knew that I wanted to be with the same program. I'm loyal to the soil. So I'm thankful that Coach Mulkey took a chance on me, allowed me to do my music and play basketball at the same time. So I'm just grateful for her that I was able to chase both of my dreams here and do it all 4 years.
I mean, speaking of the program here at LSU, you guys have a pretty different team than the one you had last year, but still you, still Michaela Williams, still Kim Mulkey. Like, what is the expectation this season? Like, what do you think you guys are capable of with all the new pieces you have coming in?
I think the main expectation is just always to play hard. Like, if you watch a Kim Mulkey team, that's what they do. They play defense, they rebound, and they play hard. So I think that's the main expectation. I mean, we have 8 new players, so just trying to get us to gel quickly. And that's just like the norm going into the new transfer portal era. So just kind of being able to see how quick we can gel and just play hard.
How does it fall on you as one of the leaders of this team to help make sure that everybody gels?
Yeah, it falls on me 100% because I know the system. I know what we need to do. I know what needs to happen. And I know what Coach Mulkey wants. So I have to be an active leader, lead by example so they know what to do and do the right things on and off the court.
Coach has also said that she wants you to be more vocal, which kind of seems crazy to think about. Flau'jae Johnson needs to be more vocal, but what does that look like for you?
just demanding the best out of everybody, even when they don't want to. I think that's the main thing she's been trying to tell me. Like, you have to speak up, you have to talk, you have to be a leader, even when you don't want to lead. And so I feel like that's the more vocal aspect she's talking about.
Are there any leaders who were really helpful for you when you were a freshman who you can sort of lean on that experience, now that you're in this position?
No, I was literally talking about it yesterday. I was like, the new freshmen, they call me grandma. And because I'm old, that's what they say. And I used to call LaDeja Williams grandma, because she used to always be in the Normatec boots and in the cold tub and icing. And I'm like, bro, I don't got to do that. So now I look back and I'm like, wow, like, she really showed me, what it is like to take care of your body. And, she was really a big inspiration for me just on and off the court. She was my roommate, of course, but just taking care of my body and recovery, like she showed me a lot.
It kind of seems like you're one of the faces of college basketball this year. You were obviously part of Full Court Press last season. Now, you're one of the most popular returning players, one of the most successful returning players. Do you think about that, like sort of taking on the mantle as one of the biggest players in the NCAA, or do you not really see it that way?
I know I have that responsibility, but I kind of just want my game to speak for itself. With everything that I do and, being a rapper, being an athlete, being one of the leaders in NIL, I really just want my game to speak for itself. I want my game to show. I want my numbers to keep getting better. Every year, y'all seen my numbers have better every year. I just want to continue to do that. And it's just, it comes with the territory. There's no pressure, though.
Is there any particular skill that you want to improve on coming into this senior season, or just general on the board?
Be a better rebounder. A better defender, more assists in my playmaking ability, showing people that I can do that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just bringing that energy. I gotta make sure my energy is right every day.
Well, speaking of all of the things that you have on your plate, you also joined The Future is Unrivaled this offseason. Just what went into that decision, wanting to be a part of Unrivaled, even in a bigger capacity than you already were?
Yeah, I already have equity in it. So I kind of, did an NIL deal with them and, kind of got involved on the business side. So I feel like now it's kind of my responsibility to do everything I can to make sure that, Unrivaled is thriving and well. But it's also so cool that Samsung was a sponsor for the event, like the main sponsor for the event. And I got to work out. I got to use the Samsung wearables, but then also track, you know what I'm saying? How my body felt after the workouts and how much sleep I got, and just really just being around all the players, and we all had a good time. And I feel like it was a dope experience for me. I'm thankful I got to be a part of that with Unrivaled, but also Samsung, because they both my partners, so it was beautiful.
Considering that you get to track everything, like while you're doing your workouts at LSU and while you were doing your workouts at Unrivaled, like how does 3-on-3 affect your body versus 5-on-5?
Man, 3-on-3 is different. It's a lot more pace. It's more up and down. It's more down and backs. You don't get a lot of rest time on defense. Like I don't get the chill on help side. So if I look on my energy score and I look at my steps, right, I'll take almost the same amount of steps that I would in a practice on like a 3v3 court in a 5v5 practice. So that goes to show you, and it won't even be the same amount of time, but it's just so much back and forth. Like, you have to be in great shape to play 3v3.
What was that experience like, getting to be with so many of the great college players in the country all in one place for that Future is Unrivaled camp?
It was dope, but my most memorable part was being with Coach T. Spoon. And it's just like her energy was like, wow, like, you're crazy. I like that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, her energy was so contagious, and all she wanted was for us to play hard and for us to play defense and for us to talk and communicate. So I feel like that gave me a little bit of glimpse of what like the NBA, WNBA life kind of looks like. And, she's played in the league, and just her expertise and her energy showed me like, okay, this is the vibe I gotta have.
I mean, that sounds a lot like Coach Kim Mulkey, right? What you described.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think Angel Reese said a similar thing, right? Like playing for Kim and playing for Spoon was pretty similar, right? They're just birds of the same feather. So just, moving on to the other part of Flau'jae Johnson, the rapping part, I got to see you perform at All-Star, I think, for the second straight season. Just how is the music career coming along? Like, when are we expecting the next album?
I'm about to drop an EP in November, like right after my birthday. I'm probably gonna announce it. So I'm super excited about that. I've been doing like remixes of like all the biggest songs that have dropped, and those have been massing like millions of views on social media, on my social media and stuff like that, and been causing an uproar. So I'm just keep trying to be consistent. Obviously, I'm really focused on this season. Basketball is the main thing, but I'm gonna continue to drop my music and promote it.
How do you like manage to spend time for both during the college season? Like, what do you have to like set a certain time of like, this is when I focus on being in the studio, this is when I'm writing, this is when I'm in,
Yeah.
practice or film? Like, do you schedule it out that, or it just sort of happens like, this is when I have a break and,
Sort of happens. Nah.
Okay.
Everything when you're doing something at a high level is always intentional.
Mhm.
And I would just say, like, I'm just always on my phone. Like, this S25 Edge right here, keep me on point. Like, I use my AI Gemini, and I'm like, okay, this is all I have to do for the day. Can you put my task in order? Can you make sure you give me an alarm 30 minutes before? You know what I'm saying? So I got to keep myself, I got to keep myself on point, and I have to be intentional about that. Because if you just let things go, it fall through the cracks. And I don't really have time for that if I want to be efficient. You know what I'm saying? If I want to get the most out of my opportunity. So I just use my tools. Like, I feel like in this generation, a lot of people, like, we let our phones use us when we should be using our phones to, get to where we really want to go. So that's definitely what I do.
How do you feel like your, musical style has evolved ever since? I mean, like, I was watching videos of you on America's Got Talent. So, like, how do you feel
Yeah.
like you're a different rapper? Or you feel like you're sort of the same since you started?
I'm same and different. I feel like I'm older now, so I have more experience and more to talk about. Especially just like living life, being around people, just reading more books, understanding more knowledge, becoming more music savvy. So, it's kind of just, I would just say more so just intentional about what I want to learn, what I want to do. You know what I'm saying? So I think I've become a better artist. I think I've become a better lyricist though. And I'm still trying to find my sound, trying to find my tone, my way, what I want to say, how I want to say it. And I feel like music for me is going to be like ever evolving as I grow as a person because it's really the way that I express myself.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was so interesting that you talked about like all of the things that you'd been through even at age 14, and to have that perspective, 8 years ago, and to now
Yeah.
like have so much more experience to draw on. I'm sure that just informs your music in so many different ways.
Yeah, no, I just have to tell my story. I'm an artist, and it subconsciously is there, and then it's like once I rap about it, I kind of just let it go. You know what I'm saying? When I speak on anything, so it's kind of a good release to have. Like, some people will say like she's trying to do this, but it's like no, like music is really my release and my therapy for everything that comes with basketball and with the fame and with the everything else.
It's funny, people say that basketball could be their therapy too. Is that not the case for you? Or
Well, it is, but it's like um I feel like it's like an inhale and then like an exhale. So like when I'm on the court, like this is like my inhale, you know what I'm saying? And then when I get overwhelmed, I'm able to exhale with the music. So it's kind of like that meditative state where like when you inhale, like you take everything in and like you have to release. So music is like my release.
got it. We talked about this earlier. This is year 4 with Kim Mulkey. Obviously, talk about the faces of college basketball. She is one of them. A lot of people have a lot of opinions on Kim Mulkey. What's something that you appreciate about her that a lot of people don't get to see, from the outside?
Just that she doesn't care about what people think about her because she know who she is as a person and her day-to-day life and how she approaches every day. I feel like that's the main thing that I like about Kim Mulkey that I really love about her is how she approaches every day. Every day she demands excellence. And I feel like that's something that she's taught me in my mindset. Like every day you gotta go get it. So I feel like that's one of the main things I learned and that I'm thankful that I was able to learn from her.
One more thing I wanted to ask you about. Coach Bob Starkey had mentioned that you do some work for the KOW Foundation.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with that? Like, what sort of inspired you to want to be a part of that?
My grandmother and my cousin both died from cancer. And it wasn't breast cancer, but it was cancer. And KOW fights cancer, all cancers in women, not just breast cancer. I think that's the biggest misconception that people think about the KOW Foundation. But that was really what it was. In my freshman year, Coach Bob was doing like, however many students come I'm going to donate this amount, right? And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to match it then. Like, you know what I'm saying? And it ended up being $1,000. So I sent $1,000. And then the next year, you know what I'm saying, we did it again. And then I became a servant leader the year after. And now I've done a lot. Like my give back, people don't know I did a give back in the city of Savannah. And we were able to give school supplies, shoes, headphones to kids, to over 2,500 kids. You know what I'm saying? And 2,500 families were there at the Inmark Arena in my hometown of Savannah, Georgia. And we was able to write a check to the hospital for $50,000. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just like a beautiful thing that really grew into, because that was just something that I was just doing out of the love, and it really turned into a partnership, and we have bigger things coming. So something I'm really passionate about. I am a woman, and I know this cancer in particular affects us. So just want to push the information, make sure women out there go get checked, and I just want to help people. That's it.
I mean, it seems like that's been a part of your music and the platform that you've had ever since you were a teenager, right? Just want to help people, right?
Facts.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to, help us out on the show here. Appreciate you. Good luck. Good luck next week with the start of the college basketball season, and we'll be following along with everything you're doing on and off the court.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. All right, Sabreena, there was a million brands, I feel like, that Flau'jae Johnson is like involved in, et cetera. Like, what was that conversation like for you, just being able to talk to her and how poised she was as a college kid representing all these brands?
I mean, it's unsurprising that Flau'jae is that poised. Like, I prepped for that interview by watching her America's Got Talent audition, back when she was 14 years old. And she just has an incredible command and presence. So the fact that she can handle an interview with me is not surprising at all.
I get nervous talking to you, Sabreena. I mean,
I'm no Simon Cowell, I'll tell you that.
Fair. Yeah, no, Flau'jae's been very much in control of her voice, her brand, herself for a very long time. And it's just going to keep growing. So very excited to see what she does out on the court and also off the court. My main thing is, if we find a way for her to play a game and then also somehow perform at halftime, we have reached new levels here. All right, guys, that is all we've got for you today. Reminders, if you've got questions about the CBA or college hoops, please send them our way. We've got a mailbag coming up. Drop us a line on our socials or on our email, nooffseason@theathletic.com. Check out the show notes. We got more info there. And wherever you're listening, follow our show. Of course, we talked a little bit of, philosophically today, but we got more X's and O's and more of all of these cultural conversations as well coming up as we enter into the quote-unquote no off-season, but really off-season for WNBA, the NCAA, Unrivaled coming up. We got all of it here, and we're going to be talking about it. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of it. And head on over to our partner at the Yahoo Sports Hub for more content. That's sports.yahoo.com/women's-sports. On behalf of The Athletic, Flau'jae Johnson, Sabreena Merchant, Ben Pickman, I'm Zena Keda, thanking you for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in to No Off Season. To hear more, be sure to like and subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.